Well, good Friday afternoon to you. Bryce Duskett joined with Jeff Peterson, the president of Heartland Farm Partners, as we offer you some bonus content on this Friday afternoon. The USDA coming out with two reports here at 11 o'clock, and Jeff's prepared to break them down. First, it was the planted acreage report as well as quarterly stocks. You and I are going to tackle this conversation maybe one at a time. So let's start on the stocks front, Jeff. What did you see in those numbers? What surprised you, perhaps?
You bet. So first of all, just let's dig into the quarterly stocks a second and just kind of talk about what they are. So if we think about it, what NASS is doing is they're sending a survey out to the farmers that's on their list that they select, and then they're also sending it out to the grain buyers. And what they're attempting to do is say, as of June 1st, how many stocks are there on farm and off farm? And as we dig into those numbers, there were a few minor surprises on the stocks, more so on the acreage side. But starting off on the stock side, on the corn, 4.106 billion bushels. And if you compare that to what the trade was thinking, the trade was looking for there to be about 149 million bushels more. And what's really surprising is that actually last year at this time, there was actually 243 million bushels more. So overall, we've got less stocks around on the corn side. Probably no real surprise. As we dig deeper in those numbers, let's just take a look at Nebraska. Nebraska's actually got 107 million less bushels on farm and off farm than there would have been a year ago. And I don't think that's any surprise to anybody because of the strength we've seen in the basis and because of some of the problems that was happened on production last year. Put that in perspective, Bryce, that's down about 20%. Then we move over to the soybean side, not as big a surprise there, 796 million. That was actually just 16 million bushels less than what the trade was kind of expecting, but it is 172 million bushels less than it would have been last year. And overall, that means we're down 33 million bushels, a little bit bigger percentage, down about 38% compared to a year ago on the stock side, Bryce.
So for planted acres, that seems to be where the trade was reacting to, and a lot of analysts might have been a little surprised. To give folks the numbers here, corn planted acreage up 6% compared to last year, soybean acreage down 5%. What surprised people here, Jeff?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing comes in is that as we look at where the acres ended up going, the overall number really isn't too big of a surprise. I'll dig into a little bit of what we did see as a surprise on beans in a little bit, but on the corn side, that 94.096 million acres, as we compare that to last year, that's up 5.5 million acres compared to last year. Now, what's interesting about that is that early on in the year, when we ended up looking at all the snow cover across North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, I was one of the first to say I thought we were going to see more prevent plant acres. But honestly, we had warm conditions, and ultimately we were able to get that melted off. We were able to really get some acreage planted there that I didn't necessarily think we would. The other thing is the crop went in fast enough. It actually came back to one of the old rules that we usually say. If you get a crop in fast, you get in early, you got some dry conditions, overall you see them plant more corn acres, and they definitely did do that. So now over on the flip side, we take a look at soybeans, 83.5 million acres of soybeans. That's actually down 3.9 million acres from where we would have been last year, which that was actually a surprise. And as a result, as we dig deeper in the numbers, we really didn't necessarily have those bean acres to give up, but that did surprise the market overall, and it surprised me too, Bryce.
Did you take a look at did you have a chance, I should say, these numbers are pretty fresh. Did you look at Nebraska specific when it came to acreage? How did we fare corn to soybeans?
Yeah, there was some big adjustments, and I'm going to go a little further even than Nebraska because I think I got some surprises here that surprised me. So Illinois actually increased their acres, 700 million acres on the corn side. So they got off to a really good start. They planted more acres. Indiana was up 1,000, excuse me. If I said 700, it'd been 1,000 acres more in Illinois. Kansas was up 500,000 more acres than they would have been last year. Minnesota up 400,000, Missouri up 250,000. Nebraska is a little bit of a head scratcher, to be honest with you, Bryce, because actually on the corn side, they came in down 100,000 acres compared to a year ago. And then when we dig in and we look at the beans, as we suspect, as we had a lot of those states increasing, we ended up having Illinois come down 800,000 acres less than they would have been last year, Indiana 350,000 less, Iowa 400,000, Kansas 800,000, but Nebraska also came in 250,000 less acres on on soybeans. So between corn and soybeans, down 350,000 acres. And so in future reports and we talk, we'll have to dig into what's why and where did those acres end up going.
Let's talk about supply and demand now as you factor in these numbers, specifically for corn here. What do these numbers do to that equation?
Yeah, the easiest way to do, and what we do is we go back to what our balance sheet, as we call it, and that's where we look at what our supply is, we look at where physically our demand is, and if we just take the acreage number and plug that in and use a 181.5 yield, what that ends up doing, and we make a slight adjustment, what we basically go in and look at is we say, okay, so for the increase in production, we know that that's going to mean some lower prices. So then we look in and we say, how much of the adjustment in production did we have? And let's adjust about 30% of that, a change. And on the demand side, we'd bring it in at about 2.546 billion bushels, which is a lot of corn. Now, the thing we do know is that if we dig in there and say, well, if we just wanted to keep production steady, what could we pull the yield back down to with these extra acres? And that'd be about 176.8 would be the yield. Now, if we said there's no way we can see 181.5 at this point, and I think I'd tend to agree with that, and we pulled the yield all the way back down, 10 bushels the acre back down to 171.5, but then we did some adjustment for demand, that's still 2.15 billion bushels of stocks. And that compares to where we're currently at 2.2. So what it says is we've got a lot of extra cushion now on the corn side because of these extra acres.
That's the corn front. How about for soybeans?
Yeah, as we dig into soybeans, it paints a picture where we're going to have to ration demand. Because keep in mind, currently where we're at is 350 million bushels of ending stocks. And when we make the adjustments for the acres, even if we keep the yield set at 52, and if we don't do any adjustment for demand, we're down to 204 million bushels. However, if we do adjust for some demand, basically saying, you know what, we think because we're going to physically lower our acres, we're going to, as a result of that, tweak the demand a little bit, you're looking at about 138 million bushels of ending stocks, which means we're going to have to do some rationing on the bean side.
All right, I'm refreshing my screen as we near the close for the day, looking at the price of corn and soybeans. Soybeans really reacted up big, 78 cents on the day for the November contract. December corn down 31 3/4 again as we come close to the close. Your thoughts on how the market's reacted to these numbers?
Yeah, exactly. So no real big surprise on how the market's reacting to these numbers. What this does is this does open us up as we go down the road. You know, we're going to physically be looking at weather. There's going to be a lot of attention looking at the forecast. We're also going to be physically looking at coming into Monday, what are the crop conditions? Because there's some differing thoughts out there. Some are saying, well, because of the damage that we ended up seeing in Illinois and because of the dry conditions we had this week, that conditions could be just a little bit lower. We personally kind of think there's going to be enough rainfall that has happened and enough rainfall that could still happen between now and basically on Sunday that we're probably going to see those ending or those crop conditions come up a little bit, maybe 1 to 2%. So as we go forward, now the market's got to wrestle with, okay, where's our right place? And overall, it opens up the door, I think, still take beans a little higher in here. Corn could get drug along a little bit, but we think there really still could be a little separation where you could have beans working their way a little higher and corn actually working its way back a little lower yet.
It's a bonus piece of content, as I mentioned at the onset of this conversation. Jeff, I appreciate you coming in here on your Friday afternoon, breaking down these reports. Good stuff.
You bet. Thank you very much.